What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Anthony and this is Watch With Me. Today we're going to be going over many different watch brands, but what some of you might not know is the actual production numbers behind the brand. Some brands advertise it and they're proud of it, and some brands kind of never want to talk about it because it's insane how much is actually on the market and what they produce every single year. So before we get into that and those numbers, we're going to talk about, of course, a watch that I'm wearing today, which is my grandfather's Timex, the absolute most affordable watch I have, but something that will absolutely never leave my collection because it's very important to me and my family, and I'm very happy that it was given to me by my aunt to look over. But very cool watch, stainless steel with the kind of two-tone face. And yeah, I don't wear it much, but when I do, I definitely am reminded of my grandfather who kind of immigrated from Italy. But enough of my watch, let's get into today's topic. So before we get into the actual numbers, I just want you guys to know that these aren't 100% the exact number that these brands produce, but through my years and experience of working in the watch industry for over 8 years and kind of being included on certain brand trainings and hearing about what brands are making, these are kind of the numbers that I've written down and have formulated to, I'd say, pretty close to what brands actually make. Now we'll start kind of from the low to the high. Obviously, you know, there are certain watchmakers out there that are only producing, you know, a few watches a year. We're not going to get into that. We're going to probably talk about first is FP Journe, who produces 800 watches a year, probably the most well-known of what you would consider even a micro brand. I personally absolutely love his watches, all of his watches. The movements are made of red gold, but very, very low production, which is why I can appreciate when the Chronometric Blue, a 20-something thousand dollar watch, low $20,000 watch, is now selling for high 30s. To me, that makes sense. If he's only producing 800 watches a year, that would make sense why a affordable watch, affordable quote unquote, is selling for a premium because it's hard to come by. But FP Journe makes 800 watches a year. A brand I used to work for, Bremont, they produce just under 10,000 watches per year. Most of those watches are sold in Europe. So next we're going to jump into one of the Holy Trinity brands, which probably the least popular of the three, Vacheron Constantin. They actually produce the least amount of the three. They produce around 20,000 watches a year. Again, a brand that is really not so hot on the secondary market. All their watches, especially the overseas, tend to go under retail, and they're not really producing many. So again, it kind of, you know, it makes you a bit confused when there's other brands out there that are producing almost 10 times that, and you know, they're extremely sought after and selling for a premium. Next, you have a company like Breguet, which is producing just around 27,000, maybe a touch under 30,000 watches a year. One of my favorite brands, Abraham Louis Breguet, invented the tourbillon, the perpetual calendar, was Napoleon's clockmaker. Extremely underrated brand, one of my favorites. Very, very elegant watches, but obviously they make the Type 20 and the Type 21 and some of the marine watches if you like something a bit more sporty. Next, we have the middle of the Holy Trinity, which is Audemars Piguet. Very well known. They produce 40,000 watches a year. They're going to cap it at that for the next few years. They'll bump it up eventually, but right now they're moving to just boutiques, so it kind of fits that. It's a very desirable brand right now, but with the market as hot as it is, they could probably produce more, but they're being very smart about not saturating the market. So they're capping it at just under, or just at exactly 40,000 watches. Then you have Audemars Piguet Jr., aka Hublot. They produce just over 40,000 watches at 45,000 watches per year. You know, it's interesting because you have Audemars Piguet, which 40,000 watches and you can't find any stainless steel pieces, and then you have Hublot where you can find them everywhere and they only make 5,000 watches more a year. Then you have Patek Philippe. They make 60,000 watches. This number is a little misleading, but most of those numbers are kind of for their ladies pieces and their quartz pieces. They're not making 60,000 of grand complications and annual calendars and chronographs and things like that, but you know, it is interesting to think, you know, they are making the most watches of the Holy Trinity, and they probably have some of the best finishing of the top three. Just above Patek Philippe in terms of production, we jump back to Richemont, Jaeger-LeCoultre, or Jaeger-LeCoultre. or JLC or whatever you call it. They produce 75,000 watches per year. That's not including how many movements they're producing, because they do share their movements with many brands. One of the brands they had a tight partnership with in the past was Audemars Piguet. They even, at one time, Audemars owned JLC, or at least a portion of it, before Richemont asked to buy it back. They do produce 75,000 watches a year. IWC, just under 100,000 watches. They produce 95,000 watches a year. To me, this makes sense. I would say of the kind of top Richemont brands that aren't Cartier, you would have Panerai, JLC, and IWC. IWC is probably the most popular and probably the most obtainable in terms of an entry-level price point. So to me, that makes sense. 95,000 watches per year. After that, you have a company, again, I used to work for Breitling. Breitling produces around 150,000 watches per year, maybe a touch over that, maybe 160,000. I think with George Kern under the helm of Breitling now, he's trying to kind of revitalize their kind of watch enthusiast market. He's trying to make more refined watches. I think you'll probably see a cut down on this production. I would imagine they'll drop back down to the lower 100,000 mark, maybe 130, 135,000 watches. Breitling tends to be a bit saturated at the moment. That's why you can find them heavily discounted, and on the secondary market, very, very, very affordable, maybe 40 cents on the dollar. Just over Breitling, you have Cartier. They produce just under 500,000 watches a year, maybe around 450,000. To me, I was actually a bit surprised when I heard this. A brand as popular as Cartier, I would assume that they were making many more watches, but I've heard from multiple sources this is pretty much where they're at. Obviously, guys, if I'm wrong and if you have a more credible source, leave a comment down below and let me know. This is just what I've been taught and what I've learned over, almost 10 years working in the industry. Then we have the really big brands. We have Omega, who produces between 650,000 and 800,000 watches per year. I haven't been able to get an exact figure on this, but we're going to say around 750,000 watches. Makes sense. Omega is extremely popular in the Asian market compared to the US, where they are popular, but in the Asian market, you might even say that they could be more popular than Rolex. And then obviously, speaking of Rolex, you have the mega of all watch brands. They produce over 1 million watches per year, and that breaks down to over 8,000 watches per day. This has been known by many people. This is not an exact figure. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 1.2 million watches per year. And it's just very interesting to think the #1 brand in the world for production, and they can't keep their cases filled. You can't find any stainless steel models, any of the desirable pieces. It's very interesting. And another little kind of fact about the industry, of the millions and millions of watches produced out of Switzerland every year, less than 2% of those watches are solid gold pieces, and yet those are the pieces you can find in all the showcases through all the brands. If you're looking for a rare watch, they're making far less gold watches than they are than stainless steel, and yet the craze is stainless steel watches, which is, it's very interesting to say the least. But that's really it, guys. Do me a favor. I have my dog going crazy down below. That's what you hear. But do me a favor, guys. Leave a comment down below. What do you think of the numbers, and what are some brands that I missed out on that you happen to know the production of it? I would love to know, and are some of my numbers off? But do me a favor, if I taught you something new, smash that like button. I really appreciate it. Until next time, guys, take it easy.